Good morning, everyone. Thank you for a very nice and warm welcome. It is indeed my pleasure and honor to give a presentation of Lis Pendens to such a great group of people, the elite of San Gabriel Valley in the real estate industry. I usually like to begin my topic with a short story to hopefully kind of create an impact on the topic that I'm going to be talking about. Hopefully to create an interest, to arouse your interest as to what I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to do that today as well. Before I do, I want to share with you some of my experience in working with, being involved with Lis Pendens. Over the last 21 years, I have been involved with 100 to about 200 Lis Pendens, either as a follower or as a remover, or just by being an observer in litigation in which Lis Pendens have been filed. So I do know quite a bit about Lis Pendens litigation. Why should a real estate agent know about Lis Pendens? If you remember years ago, when you first took your license course, I assure you, I teach license course too, so I know. I assure you, Lis Pendens was mentioned in your license course, except that when you took your license course, it really didn't create any impact on you to want to know more about Lis Pendens. Why is Lis Pendens is important, and why is it filed, and how to remove it? Sometimes there are some strategies involved. When you sell a real estate, there's some Lis Pendens there, or just days before an escrow closes, someone files a Lis Pendens. What do you do? Okay. Let me start by asking a raise of hands. I know probably some of you specializes in San Marino. Raise a hand who works in the San Marino area quite a bit. Okay. The reason I ask is that this story that I'm going to be telling you involves a true story in San Marino. And, when you talk about San Marino, you're talking about homes in the millions, right? Who knows what is the average market price dollar per square foot in San Marino right now? Somebody? 1,000? Is it 1,000? More than 1,000, right?
Yeah.
You're probably right. This story I'm telling you involves a property in San Marino that was sold at a trustee sale for $1.5 million. Okay, that's 2010. And the property I don't recall the exact square footage, but I'm going to guess at it. It's about 3,000 square feet. Okay, and it was sold for $1.5 million at a trustee sale, right? How much is that property worth today? It's about 3,000 square feet.
$3 million.
3 million or more, right? Okay. Well, actually, what happened was it was sold for 1.5, but it was worth around maybe $2 million. So there was like a savings of $500,000 on that property. Now, why do I tell you about this story? Because this story involves a very long litigation that had to do with a Lis Pendens. Imagine going to a trustee sale not knowing that there was a Lis Pendens recorded against that property just days before the date of the auction, right? Now, this case actually involves a broker who offered his services to buy a property for a client, a buyer. Back in 2010, when the market was down, there were a lot of agents offering their services to participate in a trustee sale, participating in the bidding process. So this agent, whose name I won't mention, for privacy reasons, actually offered the services, and it was quite lucrative. It was services was offered for $60,000. to bid at the sale. Now, after $20,000 was paid to an expert who actually did the bidding, so what the agent did was the agent kind of made about $40,000 for not doing much, for just looking for the opportunity and finding it for the buyer, and then lo and behold, they succeeded in getting the property. About 1 to 2 weeks after the buyer got the property at the trustee sale, he actually moved in. After he moved in, somebody showed up. At the time, it's a couple that bought it. Husband wasn't in, wife was there, knocking on the door saying, "Excuse me, this is my property." Okay? And of course, the wife didn't know what to do. At that time, the stranger actually called the police, and then the wife didn't have the sense to bring out that grantee or trustee deed upon sale that she obtained, or they obtained at the trustee sale. For whatever reason, the police chose to believe the stranger and actually asked her to leave. And she called up her real estate agent saying, "What should I do?" You know what the real estate agent did? The agent said, "Move out first. Don't worry, we'll take care of it for you." That was the biggest mistake she ever made. Because if she hasn't moved, the story would have been a lot different. So after she left, the stranger moved in. And then, of course, when she bought that property at the trustee sale, because there was a Lis Pendens recorded, everybody knows if there's a Lis Pendens recorded, what does that mean? It means that a lawsuit has been filed. If you don't know that if there's a Lis Pendens recorded that a lawsuit has been filed, you should know today. Okay? So what really happened was the real estate agent who charged $60,000 for her services to bid at a trustee sale did not check the title. Okay? Well, actually she did. Okay? She did just a little. She called up the title officer, I think about maybe a day or two before the trustee sale. Is the title clean? And title officer said, I don't see anything here. It turns out the Lis Pendens was recorded about 3 days before the trustee sale. Sometimes I'm not a title officer, so I don't know how title company keeps themselves up to date on the recorded documents. Maybe it's not instantaneous. Maybe they wait a few days before they see it on their computer that the Lis Pendens was there. Okay. So after she moved out and she got kicked out of her house by the police officer, and then they were served with summons and complaint, and then they had to answer a complaint. Several attorneys have been involved in that lawsuit. I was the third one. Okay. It was a very heavily litigated litigation. There have been like 5 appeals filed so many times. I think at least half a $500 million attorney's fees have been spent on this. Okay. Just mine alone was about maybe $150,000. Okay. So it was a very bad experience. Now, what should have the agent have done? If you're going to go to a trustee sale, if I were the agent, you know what I would have done? I would have at least gone to the county recorder, go through all the recorded documents to assure myself this, title is okay. Now, had that agent gone there, depending on when she went there, because the Lis Pendens was recorded like 3 days before the trustee sale. If she had gone sooner, she might not have seen the Lis Pendens. But if she had gone the morning of, let's say the sale took place on at 9 a.m., I know the county recorder opens at about 8. If she had gone to the county recorder at about 8, look at it one last time and then submit a bid, maybe she would have seen that Lis Pendens. Okay, so the Lis Pendens was recorded, and then there was lawsuit filed. Ultimately, I was replaced by a fourth attorney. Okay, it's a long story. He got title, and they did an eviction because they can't wait to move into the house. As of today, the lawsuit is still continuing. Okay, so have I created an impact on you? Why you need to know about Lis Pendens? I hope I have. Okay, now that's the story I'm telling you. Okay, there's a lot more to that story which I don't have time to tell you about. But I have also received calls from real estate agents or sometimes their own clients. Somebody will call me on the phone, how much does it cost to put a lien on the house? I don't see any eyebrow raised or squinch. How do you put a lien on a house? When they say a lien on a house, typically they talk about Lis Pendens, except that they don't know it's called Lis Pendens. Okay? Usually I tell them, I can't tell you how much it would cost to put a lien on a house. I think you're talking about Lis Pendens. Typically, some of you have been involved in transactions where you were representing buyers, and then suddenly the seller refuses to sell the house. Your buyer is afraid that the seller might sell it to someone else. I know back in the old days, in 2005, 2006, that's when I was mostly involved with litigation because the prices were going like crazy, and then suddenly you have sellers wanting to cancel the deal. What's the buyer supposed to do? The buyer is supposed to go to court and file a lawsuit for specific performance. Okay? After he files a lawsuit for specific performance, his attorney will record a Lis Pendens. Okay, that's how you record a Lis Pendens. So, if somebody asks me, how much does it cost to put a Lis Pendens on the house? It depends. I can say, well, actually, you pay on an hourly basis, or I can say you pay on a flat fee of so much, whatever. And then, what does an attorney need to do in order to record a Lis Pendens? An attorney needs to file a lawsuit that affects title. What are the types of lawsuits that affect title? The one that the agent is most familiar with is specific performance. But there are many different types of lawsuits that affect title. Partition, mechanics lien, divorce. Yeah, believe it or not, divorce affects title. In a divorce case, the attorney can file Lis Pendens. Anything that affects title. Now, I've always been asked about, can you record a Lis Pendens against a defendant's house on an auto accident case? Wouldn't it be nice if you're a plaintiff in an auto accident, you can go to court and record a Lis Pendens against the guy who just caused you injuries, and you wanted to make sure he did not dispose of his assets while the litigation is going on? Well, think about it. Auto accident case does not affect title. Auto accident case is a civil lawsuit. At the end of it, if you win the auto accident case, what do you get? You get a money judgment. That's not the type of lawsuit for which you can record a Lis Pendens. Okay? So, but on the other hand, if a defendant who's being sued on a $2 million auto accident, the guy was involved in a really bad accident with someone, and then brain injury, let's say, for example. He got scared. If he had come to me, I would tell him, don't worry. Well, don't worry in terms of them being able to tie up your property if you don't do anything with it. Or you just sell it. You can sell it, okay, in the open market. That's legal. That's not fraudulent conveyance. Sometimes a defendant is someone who faces a lawsuit is tempted to convey the property to a relative, like a son or some relative, with no consideration. This is what we call fraudulent conveyance. Had he not done anything to his property, the other side would not have been able to record a lis pendens against his house. But because he conveyed his property to his son, and there was no consideration, it is called fraudulent conveyance. Under the law, fraudulent conveyance affects title to the property. Because fraudulent conveyance affects title to the property, the attorney for the plaintiff can go to court and file a fraudulent conveyance claim and base the lis pendens recording on that fraudulent conveyance claim. Amen. All right. So only losses that affect title for which you can record a lis pendens. Secondly, there are some technicalities that have to be met when you record a lis pendens. You have to have an attorney sign the lis pendens and then prepare a proof of service attached to the lis pendens. Now, the proof of service has to say that the lis pendens was served by certified mail with return receipt to the defendant. Oftentimes, I have come across where lis pendens that were filed and recorded by attorneys who generally are not that familiar with lis pendens litigation. They will make little mistakes. Perhaps to a lot of people that might not make a difference, but to the judge it might. For example, you're supposed to serve lis pendens by certified mail with return receipt. You get your certified mail and then the green card, attached to the back. That's return receipt. I often see attorneys who would file a lis pendens, but they only serve by certified mail. They forgot about the return receipt part. Some people say no big deal, yeah, but to the court it is, because if you forgot your green card on the back, I can go to court and just have it removed just on that ground alone. Okay? You have to serve by certified mail with return receipt, and then you have to record it at the county recorder. And the third thing you have to do is to file a copy of the lis pendens to the court. That's just a procedural requirement. And then you have to have a complaint that has a cause of action that affects title to the property. Now, if you are a buyer's agent and they have perfected the lis pendens in terms of the procedures, your only recourse will be to challenge the merits of the case, meaning that, if you represent a seller and a buyer had gone to record a lis pendens, you want to sell to someone else, but because there's a lis pendens, you can't sell it. So the seller will have to have an attorney file a motion to remove the lis pendens. We call it expungement of lis pendens. Based on the merits, sometimes you have a buyer who meets his deadline to perform certain things and therefore lost his right to cancel, but he didn't want to cancel. He did not have the right to close anymore because he missed certain deadline. He missed the closing date, for example, and he wanted to tie up the property just as a leverage. He's going to lose that specific performance lawsuit because the buyer was actually breaching the contract. Now, as a seller's attorney, I will go to court, file a motion for lis pendens based on the fact that the specific performance cannot prevail. And if I win, I get attorney's fees for the seller. So, not everybody can rush to court and tie up a piece of property without consequence. If you're going to go to court, make sure you have a good case. I've also had buyers who was in breach of the contract, but then the seller wanted to keep the good faith deposit as a leverage. The buyer often asks the attorney, well, can you do something so that I will you can make sure that he return my good faith deposit? Oftentimes they'll suggest, well, can you put a lien on his house? Okay, I said that's not called a lien, that's called a lis pendens. I cannot record a lis pendens against his house just because you wanted him to release the deposit, because that would not be proper. You don't have a claim that affects his title. Okay? If you are a seller attorney, you lost in your motion to remove a lis pendens, there's no right to appeal. That's the end of it. So your property is stuck until that lawsuit filed by the buyer has reached a conclusion. Conclusion could mean that the buyer loses the case. Now, if the buyer loses the case, you win. that lis pendens is no longer valid. But as you know, there are some title officers in here. You could have a lis pendens that's no longer valid, but it's still on title. What does title ask you to do? Do something about it. You can either, usually the attorney that records the lis pendens would have to be the one removing it. Now what happens if you have an attorney that files a lawsuit and then he got replaced by a different attorney and then the case later on got dismissed? Who do you need to contact to remove the lis pendens? Not the second attorney, but the first, because he was the one that recorded the lis pendens. So when you have a case where a case was dismissed, now you might think that the case is dismissed, the lis pendens is no longer good. Don't worry about it. Next time when I want to sell it, then I take care of it. Well, what happens if the attorney died? What happens if he passes away? Who are you going to have sign the withdrawal? It's going to be a lot of work because you're going to have to go to court and get a court order that says this attorney died, so the court will make the clerk sign the withdrawal of lis pendens. Okay? That's all I need to tell you about lis pendens today. I hope I created an impact now so everybody cares about lis pendens, pay attention to lis pendens. So I open up the floor for questions.